handguns that I've been very curious about comparing is the CZ P07 and the Glock 19, two of my favorite pistols. And so we wanted just to get out here at the range, get a good feel for how these feel, plus do some specifics on the size, how they feel in the hand. And if you guys are looking for something for concealed carry that's not necessarily micro, this is an excellent option, either one of these guns. The CZ P07 and the Glock 19. So if you're looking to buy the P07, I thought it'd be great to compare it to the Glock 19, which is a pretty well-known gun, a lot of different features. Now, one of the things about these two pistols, they are a couple of my top favorite pistols. CZ I love. I've owned CZs for a number of years. The Glock pistol is really one of my go-to guns. So this discussion is definitely about particulars. And no matter what you choose, both of these guns would be good options. But to find what you want particularly, this may help you to kind of refine your decision. While there are a lot of similarities between both, there are a lot of differences, major differences. And so that again is something that's going to have to fit into what you're looking for. Of course, first thing we're going to do is safety check, make sure the guns are unloaded. And they are. First we're going to look at the similarities. Both are polymer frame pistols. Both are roughly the same size. We're going to take a look at that a little closer in just a minute. Both of these are in 9mm, and you can get the 40 version of the P07, and then of course with this size frame Glock with the Model 23. They do have squared off trigger guards, a little bit different size. They both have accessory rails. They both carry 15-in-1 in the magazine. And they're both kind of that in between. They're compact, yet they're not super compact. These make a good concealed carry option for those who want to carry a pistol that shoots like a full-size pistol and yet is somewhat smaller. Now weight is a big consideration, especially with polymer frame pistols. With the CZ P07, we're coming in at 27.4 ounces. With the Glock 19, 23.7. It's really very comparable. I mean, obviously there's about a 4-ounce difference between the two. But as far as practical, these are pretty close to the same weight. The lengths of the slide are actually pretty comparable, but with the beaver tail, you have a little bit more extension with your P07. But as you see, the slide on the 19 is actually somewhat longer than the CZ. Now, as far as width of the slide for the pistols, the Glock definitely comes in just a touch thinner. It's 1.1 inches in thickness, whereas the P07 comes in at 1.25 inches. So you have a little bit extra. And then one of the big differences, though, are these decockers, or if you choose the safety. It definitely extends that out because they are ambidextrous, so you have it on either side. One of the good things about it having it up here, the thickness, is that in your holster or whatever method of carry you use, this first part's going to be fairly thin. Now, one of the things, though, to definitely consider is on the P07, you have these cutouts on the slide, so it brings the slide down much thinner here than the Glock. The Glock is more blocky here. The P07 comes down very narrow. But an important thing to consider is the width of the frame on the Glock. The frame width actually comes out and makes it thick. In fact, to be honest, it's actually thicker from the frame than it is on the P07. One of the reasons why the P07 is not as thick is because it matches pretty close to the slide width. I mean, there's very little difference between here and here. On the Glock, here it's thinner, but right here you have quite a bit of difference in thickness. In fact, the slide is thinner on the Glock, but yet the frame is thicker in the same proportions. Now, one of the big differences, though, is the grip. The grip on the Glock is more solid. It's more blocky. In fact, a lot of people affectionately and unaffectionately call the Glock the block. I personally like the way the Glock feels. It's definitely thicker in the grip, and it does have finger grooves here. It does have this swell at the bottom, and when you get used to shooting this, there's no problem with it. If you're used to shooting 1911s, though, sometimes the grip angle can be a little bit disconcerting. It's different, and a lot of guys that shoot 1911s have trouble with the Glocks. I personally was able to transition pretty easily between the two. I'm a big 1911 guy. I love 1911s. But the Glock, I just adjusted my grip and I lined up my sights, and it was fine. With the P07, the CZ ergonomics really kicks in. It really is a very comfortable grip to shoot and at the range. One of the big things is this area up here at the top. It's much thinner than on the Glock. Even though the Glock has these scallops, it's a really smooth, great ergonomic feel to it. With the Glock, it's a little bit thicker. Also, thickness from front to back. And then, of course, with these finger grooves, there's a little bit more going on. But the size here and then here is definitely an advantage in my hands for the CZ. Now, one of the things about the CZ too in the P07, and this is something that they've upgraded from the original P07 duty model, is they've had interchangeable backstraps. So this is actually the smallest. There's two mediums, and of course when I did my full review on this, I demonstrated how to change these out and the different size comparisons. But this does have the interchangeable backstraps. Now, the Glock Gen 3 does not, but the Glock Gen 4 has interchangeable backstraps. And since we brought in the Gen 4, we're going to talk a little bit about texturing. The P07 definitely has an advantage over texturing. It's not super aggressive, but the panels are really nice. With the Glock, it's pretty slim. I mean, it's a little bit slick, especially if your hands get wet. Now, with the Gen 4, they've upgraded the grip texturing. So it's a little bit better along with the backstrap. That does give this, it meets up to what the P07 is. But as the Gen 3, I'm going to have to give an advantage to the CZ. Here you can have a little closer look at the texturing. Very minimal on the Glock. Pretty decent. I mean, it's not so aggressive that it's uncomfortable, but you just know that you have this gun in your hand. Of course, the back straps, a little more texturing. Of course, with the grips, you're going to be able, or the finger grooves, you're actually going to be able to get a little bit better grip on this pistol. All things considered, I'll have to say that at the range, typically, I'd have no issues with the Glock. And I've shot in matches in defensive classes where it was really hot, and never really lost my grip on the Glock itself. But this definitely gives you more confidence for sure. They definitely have a totally different feel to the pistol. The P07 is thinner, especially up here where your thumb and your index finger kind of ride. It does kind of loosen up here. The Glock has a little more feel to it in the back here, right toward the back strap. So you're getting a little bit more of a hand feel. But the beaver tail definitely helps ride that hand pretty high up. But probably the biggest difference between these two pistols is the action. The Glock is a striker fire pistol. It's a very consistent trigger pull every time. The CZ P07 is a double single action, which has the hammer. This is more of your traditional design, of course, with the strikers, and a lot of pistols that have been traditionally hammer fired are going to the striker system. There are some advantages and disadvantages with both. One of the big things is, an advantage with striker, is that it's consistent every time. I mean, every time you pull the trigger, it's just going to be very consistent. And the next time you fire it, from the first shot to the last shot, very consistent. But one of the trade-offs is striker fires are typically a little bit mushy. These can be tuned and made to be really nice. And there are some of the striker fire pistols out on the market that are extremely nice, the PPQ and the VP9 and others. But as far as from the factory, the Glock trigger is just a touch mushy. Now the CZ has the double single action. And one of the great things about CZ is it's always had a really good trigger in these pistols. And they're very highly sought after with a lot of the competitive shooters. But it is double single action, so that first shot is going to be hammer all the way back. It's a pretty stout trigger pull. But your subsequent shots are going to be in single action. Once the slide goes back after the first shot, the hammer's in the rear position. Then we have a little small take up, and then a really nice trigger pull. The difference between the trigger pull on these two pistols is the Glock has a 5.5 pound trigger pull, while as the CZ has a 4.5 pound trigger pull. If you take the decockers off and put a standard safety on, which is included with this pistol, and we'll look at that in a minute, it actually reduces the trigger weight down about 3 more ounces. Makes it really nice. So that first shot is definitely going to be double action, hard squeeze, pull. But then subsequent shots are going to be consistent. So the Glock does have consistency over it. One of the big advantages though of a hammer fired pistol is that you have second strike capability. If you pull the trigger and it goes click on a dud round, or a round where the primer isn't really ignited. You can double click this to be able to fire the round. With the Glock, once the trigger is pulled, the slide has to come into the rear position to cock the striker. So it's going to be one of the big advantages of a hammer-fired pistol. Now, as far as trigger guards go, because of the double single action nature of this trigger, it's going to be a little larger here, and it's a little bit longer. With the Glock, it's a little bit more close to the frame. This is going to allow actually for a little bit more room for gloved hands, but the Glock doesn't have that much trouble with it as it is. Both of them are squared off, which makes it nice. For those who like to grip right here, I personally don't. There is texturing on both. This one has a little bit more aggressive texturing. Both have accessory rails on the front. The Glock is just an accessory rail. The CZ P07 has the 1913 Picatinny rail. It does have 3 slots, which gives you some advantage over moving certain type flashlights, lasers, or things that you're using the mounts here in this system. But typically the Glock works fairly well with most of your accessories. Now, safeties are definitely something to consider. With your P07, you have a traditional decocker that comes with the firearm. This comes factory installed, and you just pull it down and the hammer drops. And this gives you more of a double action revolver type safety, to where it's a pretty heavy trigger pull, and that ends up being your safety. But one of the great things about the P07 is they include one of the frame safeties to replace the decocker. So you can actually carry this cocked and locked with this kind of frame safety. Now, with the Glock, you have the traditional safe action pistol trigger. And of course it has this little bar here that the trigger cannot be pulled unless that bar is actuated, more like you're actually meaning to pull the trigger. There are also a number of internal safeties in the Glock, hammer block and different things. With the P07, there's also a hammer block safety as well. Now, I've actually done a video on how to change these safeties out, how to install the frame safety, and then how to reinstall the decocker. And I'll have that annotated right here and down in the description below. Now, one of the big things for me is the slide on the Glock has always been super slim, super trim. In fact, in my video, Glock Why So Popular, that was one of the big pluses for me, is just the nothing going on the side of this slide. Minimalist slide release or slide stop. With the P07, you've got your decockers or your safety, whichever one you choose. Then you have a pretty large paddle here that's your slide stop. So this is going to have a little bit more going on here than your Glock. A lot of guys, though, are kind of funny about the striker fire system with the Glock and how thin and minimal it is, and like a little bit of the extra safety features that go on this traditional style. So it's really just a matter of preference. But personally, I like just that slim, sleek design. But I do like this pad right here on the P07. This is a natural place to put your finger when you have your finger out of your trigger guard. With the Glock, there is a pad here that tends to bring my finger to. But right here with this, it's an aggressive pad. You can feel it. You know, whenever you're not shooting, whenever you're not pointing down range, and if you'll ever notice when I'm shooting, when I stop shooting, my finger naturally just immediately goes up to the side of this, from here to here. This is a really great habit to get into, getting that finger up on the frame away from your trigger when you're not pointing it down range firing, or even when you are pointing, going ahead and putting it up in that position. Now, the CZ design has the slide fitting down into the frame rather than the slide fitting over the frame rails. This really helps for recoil management. It also helps for accuracy. The CZ is known for really good accuracy. It does bring the slide down low, and it gives you a really great low bore axis, but so does the Glock. The Glock's a very low bore axis as well. That really helps when the slide is coming over the web of your hand, and it keeps it, in fact, the higher the slide is, the more that has a tendency to flip the muzzle. If it's riding low, it's going to actually tend to keep the muzzle in the down position. So both of these pistols are good for that. One of the things, though, is because the slide is down into the frame, there's less slide showing above the frame. So the serrations right here are a little more aggressive, and need to be, because you've got less room here. With the Glock, you have a lot more room, but the slide serrations are not as aggressive as the ones on the CZ. But one of the advantages of the CZ is it has the front slide serrations right here, in case you want to do press checks or you need to grab hold of the front of the slide to be able to rack your slide. And some like it, some don't, but that is one of the features that the Glock doesn't have. The mag release on the Glock is polymer. The mag release on the P07 is steel, which makes it really nice. This can be a little bit soft at times. With the Gen 4, they've increased the size of the pad, which to me is an advantage. Another thing on the mag release on the P07, it can be switched to the other side to make it ambidextrous. On the Glock Gen 3, you can't change it. On the Glock Gen 4, you can change it. So the Glock Gen 4 a lot of times addresses a lot of the issues that this brings above the Gen 3 Glock. But compared to these two slide releases, this P07 has a larger slide release. In the Gen 4, it will actually be larger than the P07. Now the Glock factory sights are polymer. These are replaceable. These are Ameriglows. They're night sights, which I've replaced. They are metal. But traditionally in factory, these come with your polymer sights. The CZ P07 has metal sights. They're good 3-dot sights. One of the things that was an upgrade from the P07 Duty to the P07 Gen 2 is that the P07 Duty had polymer sights, and this was remedied by these new steel sights. First, we're going to do a side-by-side shooting comparison, and we're going to shoot the P07 first, and then we're going to come in with the Glock 19 and shoot it side-by-side, the exact same position. The Glock seems to ride a little bit lower in the hand, and that may have a lot to do with the sights, but you can see with the beaver tail coming down, it does come down to an angle. So I'm not really sure if that's just an illusion or not, but as you can see, it definitely pops up a little bit higher hand to hand than the Glock. But you got to admit, those P07 sights are fantastic. Now I have some true dot sights on the Glock, so that's not necessarily factory, but the factory sights on this P07 are excellent. Whenever I'm choosing a new firearm, to make sure it really suits me the way I want it to, I usually check the point of aim, my natural point of aim. And so I just bring it up like this, look over the sights, and see where it's aiming. See if my sights are aligned, pick a point, see where my sights are aligned. Now, I've shot Glocks for 20 plus years, so it's not very difficult for me. I've shot so many, it naturally comes up, just like it's supposed to. But to be honest with you, it's always done that for me. So now we're going to check the P07. Every time I bring it up, I've had other pistols before. In fact, the XDs typically ride a little different for me. And all that really does is you just adjust your grip and you learn how to shoot. But if you're going to carry a gun, that's one of the reasons why it's so important to train and to really make sure that you're training and getting that sight picture every time. Dry firing is very important. That helps you to get your natural aim, and it'll really make you more confident, and that first shot is going to be one of the most important. Now we're going to show disassembly and compare the two. First off, we're going to drop our magazine again, make sure the gun isn't loaded. You have to pull the trigger on the Glock to disassemble. Bring it back about 1/8 of an inch, pull down on these tabs right here, and the slide comes right off. Really fast, really simple. With the CZ P07, gun's unloaded. Right here are 2 witness marks. You need to bring your slide back into this position. Right here is your takedown lever. You just push it through. It takes a little more force to push it through. You can do it with a magazine. It won't pop it out like that. But definitely you have an extra piece here that actually comes out of the gun. So that's definitely an advantage with Glock. Pull the slide back a little bit and then just bring it out. Not really bad. I would say this is moderate with disassembly. I would say the Glock is very good for disassembly. Of course, reassemble is just returning it into the same configuration. Just reversing what you've done. Now, as far as aftermarket parts availability, Glock wins hands down. I mean, there's a ton of different accessories and things that you can do to your Glock. And then including extra magazines are easy to find, holsters are easy to find as well, because of the popularity of the Glock over the years. With the P07, it's definitely limited. You're going to have to order your P07 magazines. You'll have to order holsters and different things like that. You're just going to have more of a limited selection, mainly because the Glock, again, has been just so popular. It's one of the things about buying a firearm that's really popular is there's going to be a ton of accessories, a ton of things out there. One of the great things about the AR-15 is, you know, there's just so many different things out there being made because it's the most popular selling rifle in America. But if you want to be separate from the pack, a lot of times it's nice to have something different and just something that people kind of go, wow, that's pretty cool. I mean, you see Glocks on everybody's hip, and so it's nice to see something a little different, which, you know, gives you a totally different feel as well. But that's all about the bling. Now, as far as magazine price goes, your typical CZ magazine runs around the $45 range, in that area. Your Glock mags can run in the $25 to $30 range, so considerably less for your extra magazines on your Glock. Now, but that leads us to the price of the two pistols. Typically, you can find a P07, I think it lists for $510. You can typically find these for around the $450 range. Sometimes less, sometimes a little more. The one thing about the P07 is you're not necessarily going to be able to find these as plentiful as the Glock. The Glock is around, the Gen 3 is around just a little over $500, and then the Gen 4 is around more the $550 range. So you have about a $50 to $100 difference according to where you're buying it for these two pistols. Of course, with the magazines being less, that can counterbalance it somewhat. But as far as getting into an entry-level pistol that has the same quality and the same durability and probably even a little better accuracy, I think that this P07 is definitely a great choice. If you want to get something that's, you know, stood the test of time for a long time, is one of the most popular firearms for law enforcement in America, the Glock definitely has a good track record. With that said, the CZ has been, in the CZ75, has been one of the most popular military and police sidearms in the world. So both have really high pedigrees. Both are excellent pistols. Having either one of these you'll be happy with. Mainly is just some of the different features that may be toward your preferences. Of course, if you're like me, I'll have one pistol and then the preferences of another just endear it to me. And then I just adjust to those preferences. But one thing you do want to be careful of is getting a favorite. You know, if you're not careful, you get the Glock or you get a 1911 or you get the CZ, and that becomes the only gun that you want to shoot, the only gun that you like. Having different experiences with different pistols, being able to adapt and change is really a skill that you need. If you're not careful, you get so used to the Glock, you pick up something else, you don't even really know how to shoot it. You should be well versed in different pistols and well rounded. I do have my preferences. My preferences aren't necessarily your preferences. My hand size, my body type, my experience with handguns is going to be different than anyone else, and so is yours. And so choosing what's right for you, don't always listen to the preferences. Research, check it out, but make the decision based on how you feel about the pistol with the research that you have. Definitely reliability and accuracy are important. Ergonomics, honestly, are just as important, because that gives you confidence the way it fits in your hand, the way it feels when you shoot it. So put all those things together. If someone comes up, and I'll have it in the comments, you mark my words down below, somebody will say, you don't need anything else but the Glock. It's all you need. Glock's the best. Glock, you know, everything else sucks. Well, okay, you know, that person is very limited in their experience. I mean super limited. And, you know, you have to take that with a grain of salt. Now, it's going to be all about preference and what you like to see in the pistol. With the P07, you're going to get a little extra safety features. With the Glock, of course, it's been proven, the Striker Fire Safe Action pistol. And so it's just one of those things where you need to take them out, get them in your hand, see what you like, check your natural point of aim. Think about what you want is a concealed carry. But to be honest with you, either one of these pistols would be an excellent choice, and really you're going to be able to adapt to either one. These are two really highly popular pistols, and there's a good reason for it. Glock 19, CZ P07, big thumbs up. And the choice was easy for me. I'll just take both. Be strong, be of good courage. God bless America. Long live the Republic. Those are two totally separate worlds in the pistol world. Okay. Those are definitely two separate. All right. Or actually, the Model 23 is in. Okay, fudge this bull crappy. Really nice is they include a regular grip safety, or one of the basic grip. Is that they include one of the grip safeties. Okay. Whenever buying a new gun, one of the tests I like to do is my natural point of aim. So I pick out now it's going to be all according to your preference. What really trips your trigger? No pun intended.